Hi, I'm Dr. Chuck Betters, and I want to welcome you to Ask Dr. Betters. You know, one of the things I want to encourage all of you who are watching this, I want to encourage you to take a step back for a moment and take inventory of your own life and ask yourself whether or not you need some more intense biblical help, biblical counseling. And I think it would be good for many of you because of the nature of the questions that you're sending me that indicate that you're in trouble and you have difficulty with some aspect of your life or the other. And you can't just depend on somebody preaching a sermon on TV or teaching a Bible study or even doing what I'm doing right now, trying to directly answer the question that you send. You can't always depend on that to resolve or help you to resolve whatever issue you're facing. So I strongly encourage that you get into a professional relationship with one of our biblical counselors. These are well-trained men and women from all over the country who will virtually sit down with you just by way of the internet and discuss with you your need, and then to take the scriptures and apply them to your need. I hope that if I answer your question, it will at least trigger something inside of you that says, I need more help. I need to get more help directly for the problem that I'm facing. Here is one, for example, that's extremely complex. It would be something that would have to be worked out in the context of a one-on-one counseling situation with a trained professional. I know if I had you in my office, I would be digging into many aspects of this question and hopefully work toward a biblical resolution. Before I read the question to you, I want to read a scripture to you from 1 Corinthians chapter 7. Paul says, "Now concerning the matters about which you wrote, it is good for a man not to have sexual relations with a woman." Now, he didn't mean that it's forbidden. He meant that in the context of the suffering these people were about to experience, Paul's saying to be encumbered by marriage, to be encumbered by the responsibilities of marriage would be something that would work against you having some sort of peace in your life. He says, "But because of the temptation to sexual immorality, each man should have his own wife, and each woman her own husband. The husband should give to his wife her conjugal rights, and likewise the wife to her husband. For the wife does not have authority over her own body, but the husband does. Likewise, the husband does not have authority over his own body, but the wife does. Do not deprive each other, except perhaps by agreement for a limited time, so that you may devote yourselves to prayer, but then come together again so that Satan doesn't tempt you." He is encouraging a relationship sexually between a man and a woman. And the idea here that he's giving us is that the purpose of sex in a marriage is for the purpose of pleasing the other, for pleasing your spouse. It's not for the purpose of pleasing yourself, although that will be the fruit of it. The purpose of a sexual relationship between a man and a woman is to please the other. So the man should look for ways in order to please his wife, and the wife should look for ways to please her husband. Now, if you have both parties committed to that, if you have a man and a woman both committed to the primary purpose of pleasing the other, the sexual relationship is going to grow. But sometimes problems arise. Sometimes medical issues arise. And that is the basis of this particular question. Listen to this. This person says, "Hi, Dr. Betters. My husband and I have been together for 30 years. 5 years ago, my husband was told that he has coronary artery disease, and as the result, he has ED. In the past several years, we don't have sexual relations with each other because of this. I've expressed my sadness about this, and I'm angry to some degree because our intimacy has ended. My husband feels badly, but still unable to perform. To me, this has hurt our relationship, which once was wonderful. So now what? Thank you. Well, a couple of thoughts here. First of all, coronary artery disease usually has associated with it particular medications, and those medications can cause ED. Those medications can cause problems sexually functioning. But remember what I said at the beginning. According to 1 Corinthians chapter 7, the purpose of your husband in the sexual relationship is to please you. And from your email here, it doesn't sound like you have any problems. His purpose is to please you. So he should be determined in the sexual relationship to do whatever is necessary to bring you the pleasure and the sexual satisfaction that God requires. Now, when it comes to him and him performing, one of the things that most women maybe don't understand is that it does become an ego thing with a man. It does become a pride issue with a man, especially if he is really, really struggling and he wants to perform. He wants to be able to demonstrate his ability to perform, but he can't. He medically cannot do it. So that's when you have to really sit down and talk through with someone who can help you understand what some of the sexual things are that you can do to please the other. There are things that you can still do even though he has ED. There are things that he can do to minister that sexual pleasure to you, regardless of whether or not he has ED. So there needs to be some creative discussion on both of your parts to sit down. And Paul would say in the previous chapter, he says, all things are lawful for me. I'm often asked what is right and what is wrong in a sexual relationship. For the most part, not for every part, but for the most part, those things that mutually are agreed upon by the husband and the wife are usually acceptable. Now, there are some things that become dangerous and some things that become possibly disease-laden and things like that. You need to avoid those. But at the same time, there are many, many creative ways you can learn, both of you can learn, in a counseling situation. I would say that both of you have to go. Both of you have to spend time investing in the counseling, and you need to talk. You need to discuss. You need to plan. Some people think that sex always has to be sudden and quick and, off the cuff sort of thing. And that's not necessarily true. There are times when you need to plan for it. Times when you need to sit down and say, we're going to set aside everything else to really focus on our sexual relationship. There are medical procedures that can be done. Science has grown significantly in the past 15, 20 years when it comes to ED. There are all kinds of options out there now. So I would suggest your husband gets to a urologist and talks through some of these things, tries to figure out what kind of a plan there might be in place to try certain things. I wouldn't give up. It sounds like you had at one time a very pleasurable relationship, and maybe things have somewhat changed. I would throw this out there just for curiosity's sake. You might want to explore whether or not he is involved in something else. Not another woman per se, but maybe pornography or something like that, where he is looking to satisfy his urges. And that is that's a dead end street. That is something that's maybe temporarily satisfactory, but it's going to end in disaster. So I want to encourage you to, in summary, there are things that can be done, discussions that need to be held. You need to sit down one-on-one with a counselor and talk through some of these issues. You shouldn't give up. You shouldn't say, well, that's the end of it. He has ED and that's the end. but he also has to understand the responsibility that he has to please you. And as far as I've understood here, you don't have any sexual dysfunction at this point. So I hope you'll do this. I hope you'll listen closely to what I've had to say here, and I hope you'll take the steps necessary to get some further help. I hope this helps you.
Hi, my name is Melissa Weisenfels, Executive Director here at MARKINC Ministries. Thank you so very much for your continued support of this video series. Ask Dr. Betters is not meant to be a substitute for professional counseling, but instead is designed to extract biblical principles around the questions being asked. We encourage you to seek professional counseling if needed.